So this meeting is going to be recorded, just to keep the meeting like simple, so we don't have like a bunch of people making noise in the background. Everybody is automatically muted and you will not be able to unmute yourself. So when we get to, oh, I guess there was an earthquake. Wow.
Powerful things happen when we come together, y'all.
Powerful things happening in the world. Are y'all good? Are the folks who felt the earthquake, are y'all good? Okay. All right.
Casual.
I didn't feel an earthquake, but shout out to everybody who did, and thank you for being on the call. So if you have a question at any point that you would like to ask, you can either raise your hand or send your question in the chat box. Sending the question in the chat box actually might be better. It's easier for me to see you that way. Maria is also going to send a sign-in sheet through the chat box. That's how we're going to be keeping track of the folks who came to our member meeting, because as you all know, you're officially an IJ member when you have attended 3 or more meetings. So please make sure that you do fill out the sign-in sheet that she just sent in the link. So that being said, also let me just run through the agenda really quickly before I pass it over. So we're gonna open up the meeting with a welcome and recognizing our new members. I'm also gonna pass it over to Indigo and Rashida in our healing committee, who are gonna hold some space for us given everything that's going on in this like really like hard situation that the country is moving through. So we wanna give everybody space to just kind of like acknowledge what we're feeling and hold that for a minute. And then we'll go through some organizational updates and all of our committee updates. So y'all will be updated on the things that we are all working on. And then we'll spend about an hour of the meeting on our calls to action. So given everything that's going on, we really want to invite folks to focus on abolition as a long-term vision and invite folks to take action today, start taking the steps necessary today to move us to that ultimate vision. So I'll be spending some time talking about abolition as a concept and what we mean when we talk about abolition. And then Daisy and Greg, our policy team, are gonna take the lead on some legislation on the path towards abolition that's moving right now and walk us through how to support that legislation. And then we'll go ahead and close out. So that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic over to Indigo, who's with me, and Rashida, who I think I lost on the screen, but I'm gonna find her.
Cool, yeah. Hi everybody, my beautiful IJ fam. Just wanna send blessings and peace to all y'all. Got my sage burning, sending it through the screen. But we're in a extremely important moment. We're in such times that we've talked about. I'm sure there's been a lot of side conversations around campfires and where we've had revolution talk, where we've been siloed. And this is the moment where we are all having this conversation together. It's a huge moment. And thank you to everyone who is on this call right now, because your presence right here is a part of the organization that's actually going to make this moment matter for so many years to come. So in holding all that, our importance and who we are in this movement, we also want to acknowledge just who we are in our own individual journeys as well. Everyone here has a past likely full of different traumatic experiences, likely attached to racism, likely attached to the system. And we also all have a journey and a healing journey and where we're going. So I invite everybody to just get comfortable wherever you're at. Just like kind of sit down in your sit bones if you can. Maybe spread your legs out so they touch the floor. Yeah, get a little stretch in, whatever is calling, whatever your body's calling for right now, honor that. And we're gonna take a deep breath together. Out through the mouth. We're just going to invite everything that serves us through this time in this movement, and exhale everything that opposes love, everything that doesn't serve us. And we ask Creator, our higher powers, ourselves, to be able to do this work imperfectly, but to still do it and to show up in our different oppression, our different privileges in a way that matters. So we're going to do something called a body scan. And I ask folks to just relax and go through these movements and these intentions, just this awareness moment with me. So breathing the whole time. So again, inhaling. And for a moment, just bring awareness to your feet. Your feet might be tired, working, protesting. The foot is holding a lot of our entire body. Are there any places where your feet or your ankles might have pain? Are there any sensations or temperatures that you might notice? Where have your feet taken you? As we bring our awareness up to our knees and our calves, maybe giving them a little stretch, feeling where they're at. How are your knees feeling? How are your calves feeling? Again, where have your muscles taken you? What do you kneel for? What does your body respect or have a reaction to? And taking in a deep, big breath, bringing our awareness up to our thighs and our sit bones, and all the way up to our midsection. And we know that our stomach and our gut feeling is where we hold a lot of our intuition. It's also where we hold a lot of our fear. And if we just exhale deeply, what are we feeling? What fears might still be inside of us at this chaotic time for people of color, for us as a nation? Just notice any sensations that you have in your midsection, your thighs, your sit bones. As we bring our attention up higher to our chest, just invite you to take a deep breath that opens the chest and opens the heart. Take a moment just to consider what is on your heart. Is it heavy? Is it light? Does it have joy? Is it a mixture of the two? Take a moment to consider your feeling in this moment, what you're going through. As we take one more big breath, think about our shoulders and our neck. Maybe just making some circles with your shoulders if you can, or moving the neck any place that you have mobility. And just for a moment, with a deep inhale in, letting go of your shoulders and everything that's weighing on your shoulders with your exhale. Just putting it down, even if it's just for this couple seconds. Just putting it down and acknowledging that you're human. You have also experienced hurt. You're imperfect. And you're trying. You're worthy. And our last couple of breaths, we're taking our awareness to our faces. It's where we hold a lot of tension. It's where we hold a lot of tension. So if you could just let your face drop. It's a moment that we don't have to put on any face for someone else. Just let your face be how it is without trying. As you relax your eyes and relax your face muscles, just think about one thing that you've seen recently that you're grateful for. something that you've seen that gave your spirit some hope, made you feel present in the moment. And as you maybe bring your eyes back, or bring your awareness back to the Zoom room, take one more collective breath together. In through the nose and out. And just appreciating you all for taking that moment. A lot of times in this work, we lose awareness of our bodies, and we don't necessarily give ourselves time to decompress all the things that we go through and experience in our bodies. And so we also want to call upon people who have been doing this work. So Rashida is going to help us do that.
So thank you, Indigo, for guiding that meditation. What I would like to say, just very briefly, is that this work is not new. We have ancestors who've been doing the work, who has been like literally blood, sweat, and tears for our liberation and our freedom. And this is a fight that we'll continue to fight, right? And so with that, we always want to honor them and acknowledge them and bring them into the space. So we have people that we've lost that we're fighting for, and then we have our ancestors that we want to acknowledge. So whether they're no longer here, or whether they're here and it's people that you want to acknowledge who continues to fight for us, we would just like you to call on them, drop their name in the comment section, or, well, we're all on mute, so it would be best if you just drop their name in the comment section, and maybe Indigo, you can maybe read them out loud. I'm doing it from my phone, but as you guys say the names, we can read them out loud. So there's somebody you know personally. I would like to call like Fred Hampton. It's a lot of his work I look to, and he was someone truly special. Asada Shakur is someone I would also like to. She's alive, but she's definitely put in work for our liberation. So just feel free to say names. Al Muhammad, we acknowledge him. Ella Baker. Bayard Rustin. Malcolm X, yes.
Ho Chi Minh.
Cynthia
Valverde.
Yes. Yori Kochiyama. Me. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it. Charge it to my.
Kamran Afari. W.E.B. Dubois. Oh, Dubois. Rosa Parks. Harriet Tubman. Nat Turner.
And,
come on.
Yes. Fannie Lou Hamer.
Frida Kahlo. Audrey
Marsha
Lord.
P. Johnson.
Marsha P. Johnson.
Marsha P. Johnson.
Che. Come on, revolutionaries. Thank y'all.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Indigo and Angela Davis, who's still with us. Thank you all so much for holding that space for us, and yeah, I invite you all to exhale. Exhale. Yeah, and as Indigo said, let go of what no longer serves you, and take in what is going to help propel us forward during these really difficult times. So then I'm going to go ahead and pass to Maria and Christine, so they can, or maybe just Maria, to acknowledge our new members.
Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? I hope you all having a good evening. And thank you, Rashida and Indigo, for this grounding time. It's really well needed. I am here to welcome our new official members of Initiate Justice. You have completed the 3 meetings, and the following are Jonathan Barber, Crystal Cardenas, and Nancy Mori. So welcome, y'all. Thank you so much for being supportive, and thank you for being here by our side. And we look forward to all of you one day being done with your 3 meetings. So thank you so much. Now I'm gonna pass it over to, I believe we're gonna do the committee updates. So I'm gonna pass it over to our advocacy, Daisy and Greg.
Sorry, I was like trying to unmute myself. I'll go ahead and kick us off, and then I'll pass it on to Greg for additional updates. So the Advocacy Committee updates consist of, we finally actually just recently heard back from CDCR regarding the current status with AB 965 regulations. So they informed us that they are at least starting to write on the draft of that regulation. So it's still in the early stages. And so once we get more details as to when that's actually set to be released, we can share back. But at least we have a small update in that they are now in process of being drafted. With regards to ACA 6, that's something that we're still waiting for the bill to either be referred to the Elections Committee or directly to the floor. As a reminder for folks who are not on the Advocacy Committee, this is the bill that would restore voting rights for people on parole. And so it needs to pass the Senate by June 25th, which is just a couple of weeks away, in order to be eligible for the ballot that's coming up in November. And so we're anticipating that this will be happening pretty quickly within the next couple of weeks. So the timeline's going to be pretty short as far as what we're going to be asking folks to plug into, especially when it's getting close to the floor vote, which is the imperative time that we're going to be asking for people to really call their senator and ask for their support on this. So just be on the lookout for call actions that will be coming up as soon as we see that it's being referred out. We are still trying to schedule some meetings with our target. So if you yourself or know yourself are a constituent of some of these targets or know anybody that lives in the district, please contact them and contact me and I can connect with them. Thank you so much to people who've already been forwarding me contacts in various districts. We are actually working on setting up some of those meetings out, but just some refresher of the key senators that right now that we're looking to really set up meetings with are Senator Caballero, that covers the Fresno County area, Senator Grove, that also covers the Bakersfield, Central California area, Senator Wilk, that also covers the Antelope, Santa Clarita areas, Senator Morlock, that covers Orange County area, Senator Jones, which is out in San Diego, and Senator Glazer in the Alameda, Contra Costa area. So just like I said, if you have anybody that you know that is a constituent of those districts, please connect me with them, and we will be pushing to schedule some meetings before it gets to the floor vote. Sorry, and then I'll pass it over. Greg, if there's any updates you wanted to add.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So what's up, everyone? It's really great to see everyone here, be in community with you all. As you all know, if you've been attending our past meetings, our co-sponsored legislation this year has all been dropped due to COVID. So we're in a unique position where we're supporting legislation how we can with letters of support and things like that without officially co-sponsoring it. So later in this meeting, I'll speak on some of those bills that we're following very closely, that we know that are tied to this moment, but also will lead us to a path towards abolition. And sort of on that note, another thing we're also doing with the governor's budget, we're advocating for expanded credit earning capabilities inside of CDCR, sort of in line with the spirit of what we were trying to do with one of our prior bills, AB 3160, that got dropped. And Daisy will be speaking on the governor's budget later on this evening and some of the really, really big updates there and how we can plug folks in there and be advocates also. And then our next advocacy meeting will be on Tuesday, June 30th at 7 p.m. So the last Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. You can feel free to contact me or Daisy. My email is just greg@initiatejustice.org. With any questions, if you want to get plugged into our committee work. We are really, really happy to train anyone up to be a policy expert. It really seems like a very abstract and really difficult process, but there's really things that you can learn quickly and get involved and, really use your voice in powerful ways. So I look forward to hearing from anyone who wants to contact myself or Daisy, and seeing you all at our next Advocacy Committee meeting.
Great. Do folks have any quick questions for Daisy or Greg? And just as a side note, as Greg mentioned, we're going to talk more in detail about the bills that we're following towards the end of the meeting, but is there anything quick clarifying that folks needed to hear before we move on?
Oh, yeah. So I have a friend who lives in Contra Costa County. Alameda over there. And oh, that's good. So would I just tell her that she would be scheduling a meeting with you all? Because y'all aren't doing in-person stuff.
So right now what we're doing is we're actually setting up meetings either through Zoom or phone conference. So especially like, if you connect them with me, I can definitely schedule a meeting and prepare them to visit, because right now, especially with the constituents, that those are the ones that really have a powerful voice in these particular districts. And we've been hearing more and more that this is how we want to really move our targets in the direction that we're wanting. So if you're able to connect me with them, and I can definitely take it from there in terms of scheduling the meeting and going over how to prepare for the meeting, and see if I can get any other advocates in the area to join that meeting as well.
Thanks. Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Daisy. So now I think we'll pass it over to Christine for the Inside membership update.
Sweet, thank you, Taina. So hey everybody, it's great to see familiar and new faces. Hey. So for the Inside Membership Committee, we are a cool committee where we are adding new names into our database, as well as responding to mail inside. Regardless of COVID being outside, a lot of people who are incarcerated would like some more information on what's going out in the world. So that's where we come in. So our goal for having members inside is for this year is to have 40,000 members inside. And great news, we are more than halfway there. So right now we have 28,645 members inside. Ayy. And the numbers are still gonna grow. For new folks, if you would like your loved one to receive one of our quarterly newsletter, please visit our website, or you could email me, and I'll put that after I'm done talking because I can't multitask. So our next meeting for the Inside Membership Committee is going to be on June 25th from 6:30 to 7 p.m. Basically, right now we're just preparing for our next quarterly newsletter. We're planning on releasing that the second week of June, so midweek June, so that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's it. If you would love to learn the process of how to enter new names into the database, or you would like to learn how to respond to mail, shoot me an email, or if you have any questions too in regards to COVID on how to advocate for your loved ones inside, I have resources for you too. Does anyone have any questions? I think not. Woohoo. But I also want to shout out to the folks who have helped enter the names into the database. I really appreciate you. You guys have your own things that you're worried about too, but taking the time to actually add names and respond to mail, that's huge to me. So thank you. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christine, for your update on the Inside Membership Committee. And now I am going to pass it over to our Inside Organizing Coordinator, Lee, to give us the update on the Inside Organizing Committee.
Thank you so much, Taina. Thank you, Christine, and everybody that has showed up today. I know there's a lot going on, and with that, the Inside Organizers, I'm very fortunate that I get to talk to them almost on a daily basis in there and hear what's going on. And one of their main things is they just want to express their thanks and their gratitude to the work that's being done out here. And for everybody that out here is kind of advocating for them and keeping them in their hearts and their minds. And so they're super grateful for it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't pass on those types of thoughts and things. So we just had our IO committee meeting last week, and we have started training. So part of the training that goes on with inside organizers is we have inside organizers, we have members, and we have people out here that actually go in and do the in-person training. And so we have a lot of inside organizers in there that are waiting for in-person training. And so right now through the committee, that's what we're doing. We're training y'all out here on what it is, what's expected on going in there, and being able to kind of disseminate the information, making sure that you're answering any of the questions and teaching them how to organize on the inside. And so we need more trainers, really. We have a lot of people in queue that are waiting for it. And as soon as things open back up, we're gonna be going full force and trying to get as many people as trained in there, and being able to support the 28,000, hopefully 40,000 by the end of the year, the members and the people that don't know that there are members yet that are waiting. So that's kind of like what we're doing with the inside organizing committees. And that's it. I think our next meeting is going to be on June 19th at 6:30. So if you're interested in being a trainer going in, or if you know members that are in there right now that want to be inside organizers, they can hit me up. You can hit me up at lee@initiatejustice.org, or you can have them write into the office saying that they want to be inside organizers. I'll make sure that they get all the appropriate paperwork, and we'll just go from there. So yeah, if you have any questions.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, especially for folks who are new, going inside to be able to train our inside organizers, I think is like one of the most like exciting things that we're able to do. I know Maria, Daisy, Kat, Adrian, Maria Moore, who else am I forgetting?
Indigo.
Right now, who no, Indigo didn't do no trainings last year. She's just taking credit. She didn't do no trainings last year.
Shout out the game.
But yeah, last year we were able to train 20 inside organizers at I think 15 different prisons with just 6 people doing it. So, and I think Maria probably did like 10 of those trainings by herself. So shout out to Maria. So if y'all want to make it so that one person isn't having to do a bunch of trainings by themselves, please email Lee and learn more about how to meet our inside organizers face to face and train them up on how to do community organizing from the inside out. And that's actually a really good segue, because now I'm going to pass it to Maria to give her outreach committee update.
Hi, everyone. So yes, just a little feedback on that. It was really a beautiful opportunity to be able to, you know, go in there and train in person with all our members inside that, you know, truly they're very appreciative of us, you know, and Initiate Justice. So for the outreach committees, what we do is we connect with the communities and we bring IJ to the communities, and we show them what Initiate Justice does, and also help them connect and also educate them on how they can advocate and be there for their loved ones that are incarcerated through policy work. We have a really good team right now, and I'm very grateful for y'all, and I want to thank you all for collaborating with Christine right now, being that COVID-19 has came in and really has set us back with our outreach. Unfortunately, right now, our outreach events, for us to be out there in events, is really hard because we got to take a lot of good precautions regarding the COVID-19. But you guys are definitely working with Christine as well, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you for collaborating and becoming a team. The good thing about outreach is also we collaborate with all the committees, whether it's with policy or if you need some type of healing going on, it's there for us. With inside membership and the inside organizers, we all can definitely collaborate with them. Our meetings are usually on Mondays, the last Monday of the month. So our next meeting will be June 29th, and it's usually around 6:30. I usually send out an email, and that's how we communicate. My email is maria@initiatejustice.org, and that's how you can contact me. Is there any questions? Cool. Thank you, y'all. We're going to pass it on to Tori with fundraising. I think she's muted.
I'm looking for her.
I think it's this one.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. What's up, everybody? I am Tori. I help lead our fundraising committee, and the goal of the fundraising committee is to develop all of your skills as grassroots fundraisers, but also with the goal of y'all supporting IJ and helping us raise money for IJ. We do engage as an organization, we engage in a lot of grant writing, but we are trying to transition to be more engaged with grassroots fundraising. And so I do have an update for y'all. We are going to be launching today our summer fundathon. Woo! Cue clapping. Yeah. So what does a summer fundathon with IJ look like? Great question, you guys. So our summer fundathon is going to be a three-month focused fundraising event. So for all of June, July, and August, we are gonna go hard. We're gonna go ham. We're gonna pull everybody together to throw as many fundraisers, grassroots fundraisers as possible. Now, this is not about the money. Yes, the goal is to, gather money for IJ to help us, make sure that we are strong and resilient during this, economic crisis. But the goal is really about strengthening our community bonds, right? And so a grassroots fundraiser is nothing more than, a gathering of your closest friends, family, and peers. But what about COVID? We can't gather. Okay. So this is going to be a virtual fundathon. It's a virtual COVID-friendly fundathon, which means we are going to put on as many virtual fundraisers as possible. So anything from, online karaoke nights, game nights, spelling bees, maybe a bake sale where you drop things off at somebody else's house in a safe manner. Or maybe, you want to have a loteria night, or the Office or Harry Potter trivia night. Or maybe you want to just do a little raffle gift where it's not really any type of event, but you're gathering, you're selling raffle tickets for one big prize, and at the end of the month or something, you're going to deliver that raffle. Something like that. It's going to be very creative. And like I said, the goal is to get as many people involved with this movement as possible. The money comes after the community does. People over profit, right? And so right now, a big question is, how do we get involved? How do we stay active in our community right now when we're on one side being hit with COVID and stay-at-home orders, and then the other side being hit with police brutality and everybody out on the streets? What do we do? So this is sort of something we're kind of trying to do to get folks engaged, get engaged with IJ, get engaged with your community, your neighbors, but also with yourselves, and sort of empowering yourselves and pushing yourselves to be that agent of change in your community and be that nexus of connection for folks who might not have any other connection with this work. And so, Taina, I sent you a message. There's a small graphic / flyer that kind of puts this all together. We will email this graphic out after this meeting is over. But I really, really encourage all of you to consider how you might want to bring people together in your community. And then how might you be able to sell tickets or sell, food, or, sell raffle tickets or something like that. The money comes after the community, right? So if you are, so this is going to be June, all of July, and all of August. It's go time. It's time for community and time to bridge people together. So when you are, not if, but when you are serious about, you know, bringing people together in your community and throwing a fundraiser, you're going to fill out this form. I'm going to put it in the chat. So you're going to fill out a fundraiser proposal form. And so this proposal form will help us give you the resources and support you need to put on your own fundraiser. So you're going to have to provide some info, you know, like your name, your phone number, your email, so that we can have good contact with you. But also explain what kind of fundraiser you're trying to do. And how you're going to do it. And that way we know how to best support you and how to give you the support and resources you need to throw the best fundraiser ever. And so this is launching today. So if y'all have any questions, please feel free to email me at victoria@initiatejustice.org. I can answer any questions you need. If you're feeling shy and you really want to do it, but you're just feeling a little shy, hit me up and I will convince you. Okay. And yeah, just stay positive, everybody. And if you want more questions and want more inquiry, our fundraising committee meets every second Tuesday of the month. So that means this upcoming Tuesday on June 9th, we will have our next fundraising committee meeting. And that will be at 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, June 9th at 6:30. So I look forward to seeing y'all more. And I'm excited for this fundathon. That is all.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you for all the information. So if you want to get involved with fundraising, go ahead and hit up Tori at victoria@initiatejustice.org. Our next committee is the Healing Committee with Rashida and Indigo. Oh, they're muted.
Would you like for me to start?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, I would just want to acknowledge all of our members who've been engaged with our Healing Committee, who've been showing up. Thank you, Taina, for even allowing us to have this space. Healing is very important in our work, and we don't take it lightly. And so we just wanted to provide updates. May was super, super dope. We had hosted 2 events. The first event was our Mother's Day event. Again, thank you for our participants who showed up. During our Mother's Day event, we acknowledged the mothers of incarcerated loved ones, the mothers who are no longer here, and the mothers of those incarcerated. And you just had to be there to experience it. It was something truly special. So again, thank you all for being vulnerable and trusting us in such a sacred space. And then our next event that I was able to co-facilitate was our mental health awareness event. Again, thank you all who showed up. We just had space to acknowledge mental health in our community. It is very real in this work. Burnout is real, depression is real, isolation is real, and we provided space to talk about it. We shared tips. Everybody had a platform. Again, although me and Indigo are the facilitators, this is a shared space, and we all bring our work and our expertise into a common ground and heal together. So we're in this together. And that was our events for May. Indigo will share what we have in store for June.
Yes, thank you, Rashida. So coming up in June, we have our Father's Day reflection, because, you know, we be having some complex relationships with we're gonna keep the same energy. And some of us are daddies. So some of us are daddies. Let me stop. But yes, this event is really for fathers with incarcerated children, children of incarcerated fathers, and those who have lost touch with their fathers. So similar to the Mother's Day reflection, we're just holding space for people who might go through a hard time on Father's Day. And yeah, that will be on June 21st on Father's Day, Sunday, from 10 to 11 a.m. And the flyer will also be going out in one of these emails to you all lovely people. So we ask that if you are coming to that on the 21st, that you bring an item or a picture to share about kind of your experience with Father's Day. And also, if it's just a picture and maybe there's gender or a gender non-conforming, we also welcome people who want to come and hold space struggle with on Father's Day. Oh, are y'all struggling to hear me? Okay. Okay. So our next event is also, this event is June 15th. So I'm going back, sorry. June 15th is a formerly incarcerated people's healing circle. So if you're formerly incarcerated, we acknowledge as Initiated Justice that there needs to be a space for you to heal and talk about what struggles you might be facing in reentry, and just maybe even through the time that you did and all of it and how it all kind of comes together for you. So we have our two amazing facilitators. You all might know them, Graham and Miss Betty, who are going to be co-facilitating that circle on June 15th, 7:30 p.m. And the topic is going to be mending our relationships in reentry. So mending those relationships that, people who you might have known before or might have supported you through your incarceration, and how you kind of tend to those relationships and even mend those relationships. So that's the topic. And then our last event is Monday, June 22nd, and it's a men's healing circle. So we're really encouraging all the men of IJ to come to this event on June 22nd from 6 to 7 p.m. And this is going to be led by Graham and Manny, who are dope facilitators and really inspiring people. So we just encourage all the men, because we were noticing at the healing committee meetings, it's like hella femmes, and we're like, damn, where the men at? And so we wanted to make sure that there was a space for men, by men, where y'all could talk about what y'all go through, and just know that it's okay to be vulnerable in that space. And we need to all heal. So we're hoping that you find that event helpful to your experience. So one last time, it's the Formerly Incarcerated People's Healing Circle on June 15th. Then we got Father's Day Reflection on Sunday, June 21st. And then we got the Men's Healing Circle the next day, June 22nd. Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks for everybody who's poured into the healing committee.
Really quick, I just want to encourage you guys, every Tuesday we do post our Take Care Tuesday event. So if you guys just engage in our activities, they're very therapeutic. And that's it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rashida and Indigo, for sharing all the beautiful information. We're going to jump over now to some information that Initiate Justice is working on, the action items that we have, and Taina's going to start off with the first section.
Yeah, so hey y'all, so this part of the meeting is actually going to be for item is abolition. We're in a really important moment right now where folks are essentially just tired of watching Black death. We're tired of watching our loved ones be trapped in the prison system. We are tired of our streets being overrun with police and underserved for our basic needs. So we are in a moment right now where we really want to talk about like what it means to abolish these systems. Like, what does it mean to abolish the police? What does it mean to abolish prisons? What are we going to be setting up in its place? So for the first 30 minutes or so, Richard and I will be talking about what abolition means and what Initiate Justice is envisioning for a plan to abolish prisons. And then I will pass it over to Greg, who is going to tell us about some bills who are that are in line with our abolition vision, and then Greg will pass it over to Daisy, who will give us all step-by-step instructions on how to get involved and support those bills. So that being said, I will go ahead and pass it over to Richard.
Hi, did you say you were passing it back to me?
Yes.
Okay, I just can hear. Hi, everybody. I'm Richie. I helped Taina start Initiate Justice back in 2016. I'm a formerly incarcerated organizer, and I worked with the Initiate Justice inside organizers from when we started. So I wanted to just go over some basics of what prison abolition is and its relevance in this moment. I think that it's, let me take this off so look just slightly less weird. So there's a lot of confusion sometimes between what
Richard, I believe frozen.
He got kicked off.
Yeah. Let's give it a minute and see if he comes back.
We who believe in freedom
Hold music.
I think he's back. Do you see him?
I see him and I'm trying to unmute him, but it's not working for some reason. He's got to unmute himself. So Richard, if you can hear me, you have to unmute yourself.
You got to be worthy enough to unmute yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I'll give it a couple more tries, and if this doesn't work,
Text him.
then I'll just go ahead and take over. Yeah, I don't know why it is not letting me unmute him. All right, so I'll go ahead and try and pick up where he left off, and hopefully he'll be in a situation where he can unmute himself and come back. Yeah, Richard, if you can hear me, like try and maybe that'll work.
Can y'all hear me? Or see me?
Yes, and as Daisy said, in the meantime, please sign in. No, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's really important to understand the difference between abolition and prison reform. So abolition is an investment into communities so that people have what they need, so they're not acting out harmfully in the first place. And when folks are acting out harmfully, there are systems in place to deal with that outside of the prison system. So quite literally, abolition means that there's no more prisons. Now, that doesn't mean that there's never a time when folks are separated from the community. The difference is right now, under the prison system, the purpose of separation is punishment. The purpose is revenge. And the amount of time for which people are separated are completely arbitrary. They're made up numbers that are just guessed by the legislature or by judges, instead of basing the amount of time folks are away on their actual behavior. So there's a difference between saying, yo, you've been acting out and hurting a lot of people, so now we're gonna try to hurt you. That's what our current system does. Abolition gets rid of that system and it says, you've been acting out and hurting a lot of people. There's a lot of things we can do in the community to change your behavior. But in the event that there's really not, it might be necessary to separate you from the community, but only for as long as necessary for you to change your behavior. Y'all see the difference with that? How one is based on transforming behavior and one is based on revenge and harming people. So that's essentially what abolition is. It would include the abolition of policing systems, district attorneys from the bottom all the way to the top. Our entire punishment apparatus. And it sounds great. And a lot of those of us who are directly impacted by incarceration, it sounds really exciting, but I think it's important to point out that abolition takes a lot of work. Abolition means we'd have to be a lot more accountable to our communities. This world that we live in now, where I only have to worry about my life and my job and my family and my money, and everybody else is not my problem. And if they're acting up, I'll just call the police. That doesn't exist in an abolitionist world. And it really causes, it really leads us to have to imagine what else is possible, even for people who have done horrible things. We're so used to kind of that high that comes with revenge, and you hurt me and I get to hurt you back. That takes a lot to let go of that. For some of us, it might be hard to imagine living without being able to have that high, but that's what abolition requires of us. The reason why it's so important in this moment is because we literally have a moment where the community now understands that we're not just looking for police reform. We did the police reforms in 2015. We got body cameras, we got more training, we got implicit bias training, and we now understand the police to be what they have always been, which is the arm of the state. The police exist to protect property and to protect capital, and to protect bias laws at the expense of oppressed people, namely people of color, but people who are oppressed in all types of ways. People who suffer from mental health issues, people who have class oppression, poor people, and queer people as well. So in this moment, when you see people calling, they're not just calling for, arrest the officers. The officers are arrested. The officers are charged. The folks who killed George Floyd, and people are still in the streets because in this moment, we're calling for abolition. We're calling for defunding of police, and we're calling for a recreation of our world where instead of spending all of our money, pulling all of the money out of schools, pulling the money out of healthcare, pulling the money out of housing, pulling money out of mental health care, which all happened in the 80s, and giving it to the cops and prisons, we're saying we don't want to do that anymore. We want to abolish those violent systems and instead invest money into our schools, our healthcare, our mental health care, our communities, so we don't have this violence in the first place. And we can look to places that have done that, and they've done that very successfully. There's countries like Norway and Finland that have very successfully cut their prison populations down by 50%, 75%, and instead spent that money in their communities, and they have much safer communities than we do. So that's what abolition is, and that's what we really see people calling for in the streets, is defunding the police, meaning stop giving all our money to cops and give it to our communities instead, and abolish prisons, which means bring our people home so we can build the infrastructure within our communities on how we want to deal with harm.
Yes, thank you, Richard, for breaking down a little bit about like what abolition is and why it's important for us to be focusing on abolition in this movement. Before I transition into how IJ is putting forth an abolitionist agenda, I want to open it up for questions about abolition as a concept. Are there any questions that folks have? Anything else that they want to ask of Richard before I move on? And you can just drop your questions in the chat box. And Richard, I'm going to unmute you again so you can.
Okay.
Yeah, Richard, you see there's a question that came up. You can go ahead and field those if you can see them.
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, it says, where are they separated to? When they are separated, where are they separated to? Okay, I see some other questions. So I think it's really important that, thank you for that question. I think it's really important that we're not creating prisons by another name. I think there are people who really like to be like, we don't need prisons, we need rehabilitation centers. And they just take prisons and they put some murals on the wall and maybe 2 or 3 more programs, and they call it something else. That's still a prison. So I want to be really clear that I actually think that separating folks from the community in that way is going to be highly unnecessary. The grand majority of people in prison are not people who are suffering from sociopathy, which is a mental health disorder that leads people to have no empathy and be like serial killers and stuff like that. Very, very few. Unlike what they show you on TV, there's very, very few people like that, like maybe 3 in the whole state. But in those cases, those people would go to mental health facilities. You see what I'm saying? Like, sociopathy is a mental health disorder. So yeah, I don't want to replace prisons, which we've used as a catch-all. You did this terrible thing, and now we need to put you in this terrible place, with some new catch-all. It's not as simple as where would they go, as much as I was saying that there will be times, I think, when folks need to be separated, but separated doesn't necessarily mean separated from everybody. There are amazing organizations that do safety planning. For example, when you have like an abuser in a household, where they create safety plans for how to get that abuser out of that household. Doesn't mean that abuser is going to go away to some island somewhere and go to abuser school. It means that that person is going to get separated from the person that they are currently abusing. And the community is then going to have to wrap around that person and really hold them accountable. There has to be somebody who's checking in on that family, making sure they're not being harassed. That abuser's friends and family need to be called in so that they're talking to their friend or their son or whoever and being like, yo, like, this is what you need to do to change, right? It's much more community involved. I don't think we can continue to rely on these outside sources to send people to. Sometimes it can be a mental health facility. Sometimes it might be a domestic abuse program or whatever different programs that would exist within the community. But ultimately what we're saying is we need to rely on the community to take care of each other. And it might sound crazy, but I think it's really important to point out this is how our society existed for 199,000 years before prisons came about. This is what we did, especially folks, those of us who have indigenous roots. This is what we did on this continent and the continent of Africa for a very long time before they invented these places, before the colonizers invented these places.
Yeah, and I want to. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you done? Okay. So we'll do maybe 1 or 2 more questions so that I have time to move on. But I see a question here from Crystal around what do you think will be the greatest challenge to abolition?
I think the greatest challenge to abolition is going to be the cultural challenge that we need to do amongst ourselves to wean ourselves off of our addiction to punishment. Because that's not something that only Republicans have. That's not something that only cops have or legislators have. We're all raised to do that. Oftentimes, communities of color, I was raised being hit by my parents when I was a small, helpless child. Like, we were raised in this culture of revenge. So I think unlearning that in our communities is going to be the hardest part, because once we unlearn it, we can then push our legislators. They're going to do what we tell them to do. But as long as the general culture wants prisons and wants revenge, that's what we're going to get systemically.
And then I think I saw other folks are like answering some of the questions in here, which I think is great. So I think I saw another question around what are some of the pros and cons to defunding the police? And then there was another question around, what could be an abolitionist response to dealing with cops who have killed people? So, yeah.
Those are great questions. Just quickly to speak on pros and cons to defunding the police. There are very few cons to defunding the police. Because the thing is, people say, well, if we don't have police, who's going to protect us from rapists and murderers? But actually, cops don't protect us from rapists and murderers. Folks and folks who have survived or who have family members who have survived those crimes can speak to it better than I can. But the fact of the matter is, this system doesn't step in on behalf of sexual assault survivors. This system creates more sexual assault survivors by sending people into a system that relies on sexual assault. By that I mean the strip searches and all the sexual abuse that takes place inside prison and jails. Trust me, as somebody who was in prison for 7 years, people who are incarcerated for sexual crimes, They're not in there studying how to be better people and challenging their patriarchy and how they think about, that's not happening there. And they get out and they often reoffend because that's not happening. So the police are already not protecting us. Let's be clear about that. The police already don't solve most murders. And as we are very clear about, the police murder people themselves. So there are very few cons to defunding the police. And the final thing I'll say about that is the exploded police budgets we had only started 30 years ago. So many of our parents and grandparents lived in times when police didn't have the budgets that they had today. And yet they made it and they were here. So yeah, and there's many communities, white communities and rich communities in particular, that have very small police budgets. There are places that only have volunteer police departments with 2 or 3 police in the whole city, and they're fine. So yeah, we don't need police the way that they really want to make us think that we do. And to this part around transformative justice, I love that question. I'm gonna try to go quickly for the sake of time, but I really love it and I'd love to talk more about it. Transformative justice around cops who have killed people. I think it's easy. I understand people who want to prosecute killer cops because they just want to see that our lives are valid and that our pain is valid, and they want to see our system validate that. Unfortunately, our system will never validate that because the same DA that prosecutes a killer cop will turn around and give a person of color 10 times more time than they would give a white person anyway. So they're gonna oppress us and help us in the same breath. Transformative justice for what killer cops could look like is, imagine, let's take the case of, well, I don't want to take anybody's real case, but imagine one of these situations where cops have destroyed, you know, our communities and our families by killing these people. We can send them to jail and then all feel like we did something, and then we don't hear from them ever again. And then hundreds more people are killed and white supremacy goes on and prison culture goes on and our families are still locked up. Or what real justice or transformative justice could look like is bringing some of these killer cops to the community to address those thousands of people you see in the streets and have to sit there and listen to what that death, how that affected every single person, how it affected that mother, that grandmother, that brother, that sibling, how it affected us as community who had to watch that racist violence, and then have to address us after and make a commitment to what they're going to do to the community to transform their white supremacy, to transform their revenge culture, to transform the hate in their heart. And they have to work on that until we say that they do. Not because we're gonna lock them up if they don't, we're just not gonna engage with them if they don't. We are the community. Yo, you can't buy in my store if you racist, fam. You can't come by here. You can't, I'm not gonna sell things to you. I'm not going to engage with you while you're engaged in your white supremacy. So you need to lay out a plan, and we're gonna hold you accountable to that plan on how you're gonna work on yourself. Imagine if we did that with every cop who killed a person of color out there in the streets. We would have a lot of people transforming. We would have people transforming their friends and family members. We would actually be getting closer to solving the problem that leads to these murders in the first place.
Thank you,
That's
Richard.
it.
A really great breakdown and responding to everybody's questions. I'm going to go ahead and transition into a little bit around the vision that Initiate Justice is starting to put together around abolition. Like, as we continue to do this work, it's becoming more and more clear that while we are working on policy reforms that are, you know, I saw this in the chat box, folks were having this conversation, that are like abolitionist reforms. So it is like a step at a time, a policy at a time, you know, things that we are like taking down brick by brick, but with the ultimate vision of creating type of world that Richard was talking about, a world without prisons, a world with community care and community responsibility and accountability, a world without police, and a world where people in the community are actually taken care of and take care of each other. Essentially enslaving us and murdering us in the streets without any accountability at all. Or if there is accountability, it's not any healing accountability. It's just punishment. So as Greg had mentioned earlier, the bills that we were working on this year ended up getting dropped, but that doesn't mean that we've given up on the vision and on working towards the things that ultimately we believe need to happen in order for us to abolish prisons and the police. So Initiate Justice is shifting towards like a more communication strategy this year, where we're going to intentionally be telling stories of people impacted by incarceration and violence in order to normalize like the reality that so many of us are living in. Oftentimes we fight for these policy reforms and we get met with, the same type of basic ignorant questions. Like one that we hear a lot from, politicians or even see on social media is, oh, well, if we abolish prisons, what about the quote rapists and murderers? And if we're going to push forward any type of reform, then we want to exclude people convicted of violent offenses or people convicted of certain other offenses. So what does it mean to tell a story in this narrative? So for the rest of this year, Initiate Justice is going to be focusing really intentionally on a communication strategy that's uplifting the truth, that folks who are in prison for committing violence are more oftentimes than not also a victim of violence, and definitely a victim of state violence, and oftentimes like racism and inequality. So how are we telling those stories, and how are we making moves to end extreme sentencing and to, talk about like the realities? Like we have to be bold in these moments. We can't be afraid. We can't be, like tiptoeing around some of these conversations and saying like, well, this person was innocent, or, this person, their offense was technically like nonviolent. Like, no, like, let's talk about the people who have really caused harm in the community. And let's talk about the conditions that set that up. And let's talk about ways that we're really going to heal our communities, because just throwing people into prison for X amount of time, separate from their love to solution. That's number one. We're going to be talking about ending extreme sentencing. The second thing that we're going to be focusing on is increasing access to programs and credits for folks who are inside. Because as Richard, was saying earlier, when folks are in prison, they're not getting, the services that they need so that they can, improve on themselves and, not cause the same type of harms when they come home. Prop 57 gave us a real opportunity to allow people to earn time off of their sentence for completing programs, but there are still way too many gaps. There are too many people who don't have access to programs inside. There are people who are, doing as much as they possibly can and still aren't able to earn time off of their sentence, no matter what they do. And a lot of the programs that are in there are honestly things that are really not helping folks. So we want to increase access to programs that are truly what people need, and give them at the same time the opportunity to earn more time off of their sentence. And this is a perfect example of an abolitionist reform, where we're understanding that we do have to work within the existing system that we have in order to eventually bring folks home and work towards the new world that we want to create. And then the third narrative that we really want to focus on is connecting incarcerated people to their loved ones on the outside. Anybody who has, had an incarcerated loved one or been incarcerated knows too well, like how hard it is to maintain contact with your loved one. People are sent to prisons that are way too far. Phone calls are way too expensive. Even if you do have the privilege of being able to visit, the cops make it really hard. They treat you really badly and make you not want to come back. And folks are, constantly living in fear of losing this vibe, not to see their loved one anymore. And when there's so much research and evidence to show that when people feel connected to their communities on the outside, when they feel loved and supported, then they can come home and be more successful. Folks who are supported are also more likely, not to violate rules when they're inside, not to participate in violence while they're inside. So it actually, makes everybody safer when people are connected to their communities and the people who love them on the outside. So throughout the course of this year, Initiate Justice is going to be working on a report where we're going to be outlining those three topics: ending extreme sentencing, increasing access to program and credits, and then improving access to loved ones on the outside, as our first steps that we take towards creating our abolitionist vision. And, especially the one around ending extreme sentencing, like that might sound like kind of extreme for a first step, but the fact of the matter is we've been fighting, we've been doing these reforms for too long where we're just, reaching for the low hanging fruit, the people who are convicted of the non-violent offenses, the non-sex offenses, or, the non-serious offenses or whatever. But we really want to spend some time like addressing like these really tough topics. We're also talking about creating a podcast where we're specifically addressing people who are convicted of violent offenses and like redefining like what violence even means. I think, observing the protests is a perfect example of how our society defines violence. They'll say that folks are violent if they're robbing a Target or putting graffiti on a wall, but they won't say that it's violent that George Floyd was murdered in the streets. They won't say that it's violent that our loved ones are kidnapped and enslaved and put in cages for decades at a time. Like reframe the conversation about like what violence actually means, how we can, keep our community safe and stop interpersonal violence, but also focus on systemic violence and how the state has been hurting us for a really long time. So that's kind of like where we're looking, and our ultimate goal is to create a document, a manifesto, whatever you want to call it, which is going to be our abolition vision, where we're going to spend some time like doing research, working with our members, working with organizers, and identifying like what abolition actually looks like, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what it smells like, what are the systems we have in place, how are our communities holding each other accountable, and what are the alternatives that we're going to be putting in place for harm that is caused systemic and when we're causing harm to each other. So that being said, that's the longer term vision around our narrative change strategy, but I do want to pass it over to Greg, who is going to spend some time talking about bills that IJ is not co-sponsoring this year, but that we're supporting and that we think are on the path towards this ultimate abolition vision.
Great, thank you. And if it's possible, can I be allowed to share my screen for this part? I think the host has to enable that function for me.
Yeah,
not
to make you.
Right on. Okay, that'll get shared with me in a second. But what's up, everyone? Like Taina is saying, how are we transitioning this vision that we have in our heads, this abstract vision, into like concrete legislation, right? And that's something that Initiate Justice, unfortunately, is not able to do this year because our legislation that we are working on, right, was dropped due to COVID. But this is a list of some priority bills that we are following this year, right? And I'm not going to talk about all of them because I want to go quickly, and I just want to highlight a few of them. I saw a comment a few moments ago in our chat box saying, if there are instances of harm or whatever it may be, instead of calling the cops, what if we called the mental health professional or something like this? So that is exactly what this bill seeks to do. AB 2054 is known as the Crises Act by Assembly Member Sidney Comlager. This bill wants to create a pilot program for community-based responses to harm, right? So imagine if instead of calling 911 when you're experiencing harm or you're seeing harm or you're witnessing in whatever capacity, you call 911 or whatever it may be, and it directs you to a mental health professional, or it directs you to someone who can help you with your needs, whatever it may be, right? And the idea here is that the community has the responses to the harm, right? You don't need to invite the police into these communities because when we bring the police in, we know what happens. The police are not trained in de-escalation. They are trained to escalate the situations, right? I mean, I can't think of a single scenario that a cop holds as a role that would not be better served by a social worker, right? So like instead of calling 911, it connects you to your local law enforcement. What if it connects you to the local social welfare group that can help you come in, talk through someone who's having a mental health crisis, right? If it's, intimate partner violence, it's a number of things here that this bill seeks to do to set up community alternatives to bringing in the police into communities, right? And it's very timely right now. It's very, very important. And there's great news today that it passed the Assembly Appropriations Committee, right? So this bill itself, AB 2054, is going to a floor vote on the week of the 15th, June 15th, so like 10 days or so. And I know Daisy sent out an action item to our IJ members last week earlier this week about the Assembly Appropriations hearing. Call your legislator, tell your friends to call their legislature, tell them to support AB 2054. This will empower communities to be responding to harm on our own without the police being invited in to somehow solve the problem when we know that's the exact opposite of what they actually do. I also want to talk briefly about AB 1950 and AB 2342. These two bills talk about reforming probation and parole, respectively, as they relate to shrinking the time that folks have to be on this sort of community supervision. We know that any form of community supervision is harmful, is unnecessary, and often involves things like fees and fines and the risk of reincarceration. Right? So AB 1950 wants to restrict the period of probation for a misdemeanor to no longer than 1 year and only a period of 2 years for felonies. And AB 2342 wants to have parole reintegration credits. So as it exists for Prop 57 for folks who are currently incarcerated, setting up like a parallel program so that folks can be participating in programs and reaching certain milestones to help get time off their parole sentence. So those are two bills that, we can look at those as reform, right? And not truly abolitionist as in nature, as we think that something like AB 2054 is. But those two bills get us to a place where we can see these systems as lessening them until we get to the point where we don't need community supervision at all because we don't need prisons in the first place, right? So those two bills sort of help us get to the end point. And I think they're both really great examples of what it takes to, if we're talking about like non-reformist reform or like reform that's acceptable versus reform that's not acceptable. With Initiated Justice, we are supporting both of these bills because it gets us to a future place where we want to be, which inevitably takes us to the end point, right, of not having prisons and community supervision at all. And there's also one more bill that's not on this list that I want to talk about very briefly, which is AB 2712, which is the California Universal Basic Income Bill, the UBI bill. So this was an idea that was popularized by Andrew Yang when he was running for president. The UBI is just free bread, right? It's like once a month, every person in the country who's over 18 gets $1,000 in their wallet, unconditionally, no questions asked, right? So I don't know about y'all, but if I had an extra $1,000 in my pocket each month, it would help me meet my needs, pay student debt. I mean, all the things in the world it could do, right? And this is something that also, when you think about it in an abolitionist framework, that, if we think that folks are not having their needs met economically, and that's why they're leading towards crime and harm, let's give people what they need in the first place, right? And sometimes that means just giving people a blank check. Let's just give them this extra money each month, right? So there's bad news because that bill got dropped by COVID. Maybe I should have led with that. The UBI bill is not going to be going forward this year, which is really, really unfortunate. But when it comes back next year, I mean, I know Initiated Justice is going to be supporting it, and we hope that we can get other folks on board too, and really broadening our scope of what abolition means. Does abolition just mean improving the prison conditions and ending extreme sentences? Yes, but it also means things like universal basic income and free higher education and free healthcare, things like that. When you're giving people what they need, that's setting everyone up for way more positive outcomes than anything like a prison reform would do in the first place, right? So there's that bill. And then also briefly, there's AB 3121, which is not on this list, from Assembly Member Shirley Weber, which is a bill that wants to set up a task force to study the question of reparations in the United States and in California specifically. So it's a question that's been pushed back and forth for a very long time throughout history. And this bill really wants to, if it's passed, it would set up this commission with appointments from the governor, appointments from the Senate and Assembly leader to study that question of reparations. What does that look like in the 21st century? What does that look like in 2020? Right? And how are we tying in the legacy of slavery into our day-to-day life? Like, we can all see it, and I'm sure most of us on this call can sort of paint that picture of how slavery led to the system we have right now with mass incarceration. But how can we talk about that? Or what that task force wants to do is get that in the public discourse. So AB 3121 is another great one to look out for. So those are the bills quickly in a nutshell. And then I just wanted to hop over here to the California State Assembly website to show folks how you can participate in these legislative hearings and in these policy committee hearings. So if we're talking about, for example, AB 2054, the Crises Act, right? We would go to the Assembly website, asm.ca.gov. You go to committees, you pop down here to appropriations. This takes you to the appropriations site. You go over here to hearings, and then you see the hearings. There was just one today. Today was when AB 2054 passed. And you come down here and there's a phone number to call into. So you can also, where it says hide details, there's also something that says listen and watch while the committee hearing is ongoing. So you can tap into this meeting. You can watch it on your computer and you can see, oh, the bill that I want to advocate for, which is down here, AB 2054, right? When it's time for this bill to be heard, you get to call in with this number. Right, you give this access code, and the person on the phone, the operator, I don't know why I couldn't think of that word, the operator You dial this number, the operator tells you to press 1 and then 0. And then when it's your time, you say your name, your position, and you don't really get to say why you support the bill. It's just a very quick Me Too. That's what you call the Me Too, not to be confused with the wider Me Too movement. But the Me Too is when you say, my name is Gregory Fidel, I'm with Initiate Justice, and I support AB 2054. Right? You call in, you give that short blurb, and then there's probably 100 people in line behind you on the phone. And that's how you are getting involved in this process, right? And it's how you're making sure that people in Sacramento know that you support the Crises Act and that you support community responses to harm instead of the police being welcomed in. Yeah, and it's the same thing over here on the Senate website. You would just go to the committee that you want to go to. It'll give you a link to watch the hearing. And then while you're watching the hearing, a phone number will pop up, and it will allow you to call in and then give your Me Too and your support. Oh, okay. I'm going to stop sharing now. Oh, shit. How do I do this? Okay, I see it. Sorry, that was harder than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, so those are the bills that we're following this year, and that was a very quick overview of how you can give your Me Too and how you can make sure that these folks are hearing from you. And then also, I want to just a point that I was making a few moments ago with Daisy sent out this action email a few days ago. I'm sure all of our IJ members received it, right? And she just walked through everything I just said, right? She's saying that AB 2054 is going to the Assembly Appropriations Committee this week. This is the number. Call in at this time. Call your legislator. Tell your friends to call their legislator. And make sure that you are really exercising your action here, right? I know all of us right now are feeling a lot of feelings, and it's a very, very tough time, but we want to make sure that we're meeting this moment with action. Right? We're not just meeting this with empty rhetoric and things we're seeing on hashtags and social media, right? Like, if we're trying to be about it right now, that means calling your legislator and saying you support community responses to harm instead of the police, right? And you can definitely, I know that was a very quick overview, and you can definitely run me through, you can hit me up or hit Daisy up, right? If you need questions about how you can hop into these sites and how you can give your Me Too's and things like that. I'm seeing there's a bunch of questions here. In the chat. Can I support a bill if I'm not a citizen? Hell yeah. Anyone can support that, man. I mean, yeah, that's for sure. That's on board. That's not even a question. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I know I was speaking quickly. I have a bad habit of speaking really quickly when I get excited. So I'm sorry if that wasn't clear or if just parts where it were going too fast. But there's a couple bills that we're following. And I will, someone sent me a question about sending that list out to the members. I'll make sure we do that. So that the priority bills that we are following is out in our email threads, which is another great reason to make sure you're signed up tonight. So we do have your email contact information. And the Me Too's, when you get on the phone, there's usually a lot of people on the lines. And so it can be a little bit technically confusing about when am I supposed to speak, when am I not, but the operator on the line will sort of walk you through it if you want to get involved like that. And then, yeah, that's everything I wanted to say. Not as articulate as I wanted to say it. But I'm going to pass that off to Daisy, and she's going to speak a little bit about the governor's budget and some of the big highlights we're seeing, big changes to the criminal justice system that are coming as of budget cuts and things like that.
Thanks, Greg. I just wanted to point out that Greg is actually very articulate, so he doesn't give himself enough credit for that right now. But yeah, I mean, and if there's any further questions on the presentation that he just did, feel free to email myself or him, and we can definitely go over anything that maybe there's still questions around. But yeah, so that is how you can support the bills, and just wanted to really point out that we, even by calling in and making the statement or emailing those committees to let them know your support is really helping push forward the bills that we are in support of. I was listening to to a hearing yesterday where I was just listening a bunch of people calling in opposition of a bill, not one of the ones that we had reference to on this call, but just a separate bill, and just hearing how many people were calling in really made an impact on those who were in the committee. So yeah, that's, if you can call in, that is a really good way to make sure that a bill can move through the legislature and eventually make it onto the floor, which is that final step once it gets through both houses. So I'm briefly just going to go over the budget because that is also another way that you can plug in, especially now that there's conversations around having to defund police departments and move what's happening. So I'm going to be referencing the proposal that was revised and talked about and highlighted by the governor's office in mid-May. So every year, the governor's office releases a proposal of what they anticipate the budget to be for the state of California, and that the fiscal year runs from the 1st of July through the 30th of July. So the budget for this last 2019-2020 is about to end. And so at this point, the legislature is having to consider the various proposals made by the Governor Newsom's office for the entire state of California, the various departments that are underneath the state of California. And so the budget needs to be finalized by and passed by the state legislature, both the Assembly and the Senate, by June 15th. So that is coming up in a couple of weeks. And so from there, it's just a matter of the governor signing and affirming the finalized budget, which is set to take place on the 1st of July. So I wanted to highlight what some of the revised proposals were, because there was a massive shift in things from when the initial budget was released in January, then COVID-19 hit, and then now, we're in the middle of what the situation is as of right now. And so in May, some of the key highlights that are affecting people who are in CDCR institutions is that there was a proposal to close out 2 state prisons within the next couple of years. So that would be one prison closing in the 2020-2021 year, and then another one in the 2021-2022 year. There was also a proposal to expand good conduct credits, and that would be something that they are currently drafting regulations for, so that way they can figure out how it's going to be applying to those who are currently incarcerated in CDCR facilities. There was a proposal to consolidate fire camps and close out 8 existing locations because the camps are not filled up at capacity. And they also wanted to remodel the terms of parole. And so paroles are the proposal is to cap parole terms at 24 months, which would be 2 years for most people. And they would also establish what's called an earned discharge program at 12 months and 18 months, depending on the type of offense that falls under the category. So this would be for most individuals as well. And then finally, they are also proposing to close out the Division of Juvenile Justice. And so that means that they would stop receiving youth beginning January 1st of next year. And so that would also shift the responsibility over to the Health and Human Services Agency instead of CDCR. And so with that, the current proposal for CDCR itself as a department is $13.1 billion out of the proposed $15.9 billion in whole for public safety. And so this figure has been increasing for CDCR over the last couple of years. And so, the proposals that we just mentioned that were made by Governor Newsom's office is what they're anticipating will help lead to reduction in the population. And so with both the Assembly and the Senate Budget Committee still finalizing what each house is going to be submitting to their respective house, this is the time where people can really chime in to provide any input, any comment in terms of the proposed highlights or anything else on the budget revise that was made. If you are in support of it, if you are in opposition, do you think they need to expand, for example, expand good conduct credits to be retroactive? Like, those are all things that they are going to be taking into consideration. And this is a really good time, especially with that deadline coming in, where we can push for decarceration, because right now there's still this investment in incarceration. We want to move that money away from incarceration and the criminalization of people, and instead invest it and move that money over to community-based services, especially in the wake of COVID-19, when we're still seeing folks who are dying in our state prisons. They're not being able to really accommodate folks at social distancing. They're not really moving forward on expediting releases to reduce the population. So we really want to encourage folks to get involved with budget advocacy. And so what you can do is you can send an email. They're still accepting public comments via email. And so you can submit your public comment to the Assembly Budget Subcommittee 5 or the Senate Budget Committees. And this would be just introducing yourself and stating what your thoughts are on the proposed budget. You know, I support closing 2 prisons. I think we should close more. I think we need to expand good conduct credits and make it retroactive. You know, whatever it is that you think really would help push forward and encourage the members of the legislature to support the proposals or make amendments. And then, you know, I encourage something that we've been talking about for several of our meetings is sharing your story. How does this budget proposal affect you? How does it affect your loved one? And really drawing making those connections, because then that would really help them see this is going to make a difference in somebody's life. And then, you know, sending that by closing and restating your position on what you believe needs to be done in accordance to the budget. So what I will be doing after this meeting is I will send out an email with the 2 email addresses where you can submit those comments to, along with the ask that you submitted as soon as possible, because the deadline is coming up in a couple of weeks for the legislature to finalize it. And then just some easy tips on how you can go about submitting and drafting your email to submit it for public comment. And that's all I have. I'm looking at comments. I'm not sure offhand regarding the question about the transition of youth to DHS. I believe this is specifically just for folks who would have been shifted directly to the custody of CDCR. Greg, I'm not sure if you're familiar with whether that would be including juvenile probation in that transition to DJJ.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but we can definitely look into that and follow up. And yeah, we can track that down.
And then, does anybody have any questions? And again, you know, our emails we'll be dropping it throughout the remainder of this call. But if there's any further questions, feel free to email myself and Greg. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions, clarifications, confusions regarding the action items that we've laid out for folks. Because this work, we need to really you know, join forces to get this stuff passed to help you know, those who we are advocating for.
Yeah, thank you so much, Daisy and Greg. And as folks are typing up their questions, I just wanted to add one thing really quickly, that after this budget process is over, so after the budget is finalized on June 15th and then signed by the governor by June 30th, whatever changes are going to happen in CDCR, they are going to have to codify those changes through regulations. So then there's a regulations process through an agency called the Office of Administrative Law. So Initiate Justice will continue to follow these processes all the way to the end. So even if we do get some wins in the budget, we're going to fight to make sure that they're actually implemented correctly. And then for whatever we don't get in the budget that we want to see, we will continue to fight for those in the regulations process as well. So please stay tuned for updates on how you can continue to stay engaged in the legislative and budget process now, but then even after the budget passes, moving through the regulations process in addition to that. So yeah, we have time for questions. So if folks have questions for Daisy or Greg about any of the bills that we're following or any of the processes that they went over, please drop your questions in the chat. I feel like as soon as I move it along, then a question is going to pop up. But if there's no questions, that's okay too. Then I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Maria and Christine to close us out.
Puppy.
Cool. Well, everybody, this was a very informative session. We learned the definition of abolition and what it looks like with the help of Richard and Taina. We learned how to give a Me Too for committee hearings and budget subcommittees with Greg and Daisy. You got an update on committees. I hope you find one committee and really get with them. What else? we have a member of the month, which is really exciting. And Taina, I was wondering if you could have Greg unmuted so he could shout out our member of the month. But before that, don't forget that next week we're having our webinar Wednesdays. We're going to be talking about the Free the Vote campaign, and we have some amazing guest speakers. Miss Betty, and I don't know if she's here. She's part of the Oakland cohort A, and also an SC sister too. And also one of our board members, Richard Morales too. It's gonna be a cool committee. Be on the lookout for an RSVP link. And yeah, I'll pass it over to you, Greg. Do your thing.
Right on. Thank you, Queen. So it's my honor to announce our May member of the month. I'm definitely going to build it up and try to pull as much suspense out of it as I can. This member has been a day one IJ supporter. Really, I remember we did an event a couple years ago at the Big House in South LA. It was around our Democracy Needs Everyone report, around our Voting Rights and Democracy Act. Really, it was like one of our first events that IJ ever had in the public, where we invited people to come through. And where I look at where we are now versus where we were back then, we've grown so much, and it's really amazing to see all these new faces. But we just really want to respect and recognize those who have been with us since day one, who they've been supporting. This member is a really, really amazing advocate, is a really fierce advocate for her husband, is an amazing mother, used to help out IJ with mail, things like this. So without further ado, Adrian is our member of the month for May. Shout out Adrian. She's definitely a day one. Yeah, we really appreciate you. And hopefully you're unmuted maybe. You could.
I am. Hi. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the awesome introduction, Greg. Good job. Yeah, I always tell when I would do the mail nights that the first one I went to was at Richie and Taina's apartment, and there was 5 people, I think it was. And then when I started facilitating the mail nights, we were getting up to 30, 40, 50 members, and they're helping out with answering mail. So it's awesome to be a part of something that just keeps growing and can't stop, won't stop, for sure.
Congrats, love.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm on mute now.
So congrats on Adrian for that, and also shout out to her too, because she was one of my first fellows too. So I appreciate you, and you're doing such an amazing job too to advocate for your husband and being an awesome mom too. So I see you. I appreciate you. Okay, LaBugs. So the time now is 8:10. We're done with our meeting, which is really exciting. For new people, if you're interested in learning more about the committees, how to be involved, Taina is gonna do a little orientation with you. Very exciting. I think that's it. Continue to stay magical. It's okay to not be okay, and bring forth self-love too. You are all amazing. Chirp, chirp.
Thank you so much for joining us, y'all. Have a great evening, and remember to just take it one day at a time. We're going to get through all of this. Take care.
Bye.
So for all the new members that would like to stay for the orientation, go ahead and stay on, and everyone else is welcome to go.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
All right, are these the folks who are staying? Yeah.
New members.
Cool. I didn't think anybody was gonna stay. I was just telling Indigo, I was like, everybody's done. Even if they're new, they're not gonna stay. They're just gonna be like, all right, bye. I'll talk to y'all next time. But I appreciate you all for your commitment.
Ye of little faith.
I guess I was just speaking for myself. I would have been ready to sign off. But yeah, so what we usually do with our member meetings in person is for folks who are new or like new-ish to this work, we just do a little bit of a background on Initiate Justice, who we are, why we do the work that we do, and just offer like a little bit more context around the work that we're doing. So for those of you who don't know, Initiate Justice was co-founded by myself and Richard in late 2016 with the goal of ending mass incarceration by activating the political power of those of us who are directly impacted by it. So we fight to change statewide laws in California by training up currently incarcerated people, formerly incarcerated people, and people with incarcerated loved ones to be the leaders in this work. So all of the bill ideas that we get are informed by our members inside. All of our strategies and actions that we decide to take, we decide to work on what we're going to work on by doing surveys of our members inside and getting guidance from them. All of our staff and board of directors are people who are directly impacted by mass incarceration one way or the other, so we are completely for us, by us. Our membership is open to everybody, however, so for allies who also want to show up and support our work, you're 100% welcome to be a member of Initiate Justice, and we thank you for everything that you do to support us. We do this work through what we call an inside-outside organizing strategy. So on the inside of prisons, we have members and organizers, and on the outside of prisons, we have members and organizers. So inside, if you want to be a member of Initiate Justice, all you need to do is sign up for a mailing list, and then you get a quarterly newsletter from us that has updates on the work that we're doing, on legislation that is moving forward, and then we also usually just send like some action items, so ways that people can get involved in legislation, ways that they can advocate for their rights from the inside. So Initiate Justice now has just over 28,000 members inside, so there's 28,000 people who get our newsletter every quarter, and as Christine mentioned earlier, we are going to be sending our newsletter out in the next couple of weeks, and everybody will be getting an update on the budget and what they can take to be involved in the process. To be an inside organizer with Initiate Justice, you go through a rigorous training program on how to be a community organizer, how the state legislative process works, and how to fight for your rights safely from inside prison. Lee, who I believe is still on the call, is our current inside organizing coordinator. Yep, there's Lee. Hi, Lee. And he has taken over for Richard, who's no longer on staff, but is still on our board of directors. And Richard created our inside organizing program. He was our first inside organizer when he was still locked up in Soledad. And we have about 140 active inside organizers who are being trained by Lee, who are being trained by our members and volunteers who go inside to train folks in person, and the inside organizers are the ones who are really leading the work from the inside. So they're the ones walking around the buildings, recruiting new members, telling folks about bills, squashing rumors, and really like organizing folks into effective action. So that's the inside. The outside, we have members and organizers, again, as I had mentioned. So members are folks like you, folks who are joining us for our monthly member meetings, who are also joining a committee. So the requirements for officially, being able to say you're a member of Initiate Justice are to come to at least 3 member meetings. So please make sure that you sign in so that we can track how many meetings that you've been to. And we also ask that you join at least one committee so that you can stay plugged into the work that we're doing. And we have our awesome committee leads who are, making sure that we are continuing to move forward. So again, as a reminder, the 6 committees are Advocacy, led by Daisy and Greg, Inside Membership, led by Christine, Inside Organizing, led by Lee, Outreach, led by Maria, Fundraising, led by Tori, and then Healing, which is led by Indigo and Rashida. So yes, to be a member, you have to come to at least 3 meetings and you have to participate in at least one of those committees. So whichever one you are interested in, contact the people who are running that committee, and that's membership. And then outside organizers are folks who go through our Institute of Impacted Leaders, which is a 12-week organizing training program for people impacted by mass incarceration on the outside. So that is formerly incarcerated people and people with incarcerated loved ones. Many of our staff members and just members in general are graduates of the Institute of Impacted Leaders. So Maria, Daisy, and Tori are all, and Christine also went through the Institute of Impacted Leaders. Lee is going through the Institute now. Oh wait, and Indigo and Rashida, and yeah, almost everybody.
We in this thing.
Yeah, have gone through the Institute of Impacted Leaders. So again, the Institute is a 12-week program that's really mirrored off of the Inside Organizing training program. So outside organizers essentially learn the same thing, how to be a community organizer, how to engage in statewide policy advocacy, and how to advocate for your rights, either as a formerly incarcerated person or a person with an incarcerated loved one. For folks who are interested in joining the Institute, because of COVID, everything got messed up this year. So our institutes that we were supposed to do in spring, we're actually launching in the summer, and those are full already. So our new institutes won't be launching until early next year, unfortunately. But if you're interested in joining the Institute, you are welcome to do that beginning next year. And in the meantime, you can still stay involved with us as a member. And yeah, we'll be launching an institute this summer with folks who live in the Inland Empire and folks who live in Sacramento. Like I see Roxana is on here. She's in our Sacramento cohort. I'm trying to think. Holly is also in our Sacramento cohort coming up. Sorry if I'm forgetting anybody, but shout out to the folks who have already signed up to join the Institute. Yes, and the question here, IJ is only in California. That is correct. We are a state-based organization, and we focus on state laws because most people incarcerated in the country are in the state prison system, and the same is true for California. So we focus on the state prison system here, which also means that we really don't focus a lot on local work either. So things that involve like counties or cities or local jurisdictions, not that that's not great work, and we support the organizers doing that really dope work, but IJ focuses on statewide legislative advocacy. So I think that was pretty much all that I wanted to say about, who Initiate Justice is, how we do the work that we do, and why. Do folks have any questions for me? I also feel like it's like a smaller group, so I wouldn't mind unmuting folks if you just want to raise your hand. Or you can drop your questions in the chat box. Or if I'm just like so very clear that there are no questions, then that's fine too. Or rather, folks want to get off. Right, yeah, don't forget to sign in if you didn't sign in yet. And I see that Sergio has a question, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Sergio.
Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm from California, but I'm currently living in the state of Indiana for grad school. But most of the work that I've been doing in regards mass incarceration is all my work is based in California. I'm with like several organizations, Project Rebound, the Prison Education Project, which is based out of Southern California. So all of the work that I do is in California. I just been working either remotely or when I come and visit over the summer or the winter. And so I was wondering if maybe not for the healing, I'm not sure how the healing or that committee works, but that's the one that I was kind of interested given my field, which is counseling psychology. But I was wondering if there's any way that I could still get involved while still living, out here in Indiana. Oh, so currently I am in California actually, I just saw that message. I'm currently in California. I'm taking care of my mom, but I'm going back in August. And I mean, I'm going to finish off my grad school over there. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, just to answer from the Healing Committee, thank you for being interested. We would love to have you come through. Right now, we're all virtual. So our next committee meeting is on the 29th.
Okay.
And yeah, if you stay tapped in, we'll send you the Zoom link. I'll make a note. And yeah, mostly we're just doing all our events on Zoom right now. So for now, it'll all be online. And then when we move into back in RL, then maybe you'll come through at some point. But yeah, super happy to have you from afar.
Yeah, cool, dope. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just to speak to that, I think something that we're learning as an organization is that, you know, it's possible to connect digitally in ways that we hadn't like previously considered before. So for folks who are like deeply invested in doing work in California, even if you're not local, like I'm sure that as we continue to like grow and evolve, like we will come up with more creative ways to keep folks engaged. Thank you. Are there any other questions? This chat is
Appreciate
also
that,
funny.
Daisy.
Well, great. Thank you all so much for being a part of Initiate Justice and the work that we're doing. Y'all are amazing. Appreciate you all so much. Please join us for our webinar on Free the Vote next Wednesday. We'll have some of our dope members, board members, institute graduates will be facilitating with us. Yeah, and then also hope to see you at the next member meeting, first Wednesday in July. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Defund the police. What we finna do, defund the police. What we finna do, defund the police. Hey, what we finna do, defund the police. What we finna do, we finna free my man 88.
Oh, Lord.
Period.
Good night. Yeah.